Hello there, YouTube America and my fellow gamers. Welcome to another one of Fat Man's reviews and rants. Today's particular book was one I pulled. Was one of my more heavily used, my more, I should say, more. I want to say the most favorite, but one top 10 is the AD&D second edition campaign source book and Catacomb guide. This is a nice, nifty book, and it's for its size. It actually packs a lot of valuable information, especially for newer GMs who haven't had an opportunity to game a lot and build on a repertoire. Build your own concept of what you want to do and how you want to do it. The atypical hack and slash adventure is underground, and I've always learned, I guess, in the early days I did my share of that too when I first started, but I started young enough, early enough that by the time I got into my late teens and my early 20s, I stopped using the dungeon crawl as the end all to beat all, because especially the random ones, there's a lot, and I ran on this one a lot. I don't like them where somebody will come up and say, I've got a great idea, and some powerful entity, some bored super arch wizard or deity decides to play with the player characters by pulling four random yahoos and throwing them into a catacomb or into an underground, whatever that they've built. Basically something to entertain themselves as they watch the players bumble from one thing to the next and hope to see who makes it, who survives, and who don't. That's a basic saying. It's not unique, and a lot of people come up with it. And frankly, it's cliche and old. I don't like it myself because I just don't. I'm sorry, I just don't. Now, this particular book, like I said, I got a lot of good use out of it, especially when it first came out. And I've got mustard stains on it, Cheeto stains, I think, or Dorito stains. The sides of it are aged and tempered, because this is a book that did not sit on the shelf as often as some of these other ones. And some of the stuff in here, even today, still has value to me, any player. I mean, let's just let me read off some of the chapters to give you an idea. Logistics of play, pacing and theatrics, the use of judgment, creating the campaign, creating world maps and casting the adventured, making NPCs live, the dungeon campaign, the generic dungeons, typical maps, force perspective. Okay. See, so when we talk about some of this, the logistics of play, gaming etiquette. I just did a bit on that, and and some people, when I bring up the term, they're like, what do you mean gaming etiquette? Well, Jesus, come on. We all have an etiquette depending on where we're at. There's certain expectations and certain behaviors that we should maintain or to pursue. And then there's the spirit of the game. Come on. So gaming etiquette. While one does not necessarily need to know which side to play this out before it goes on to successfully entertain gamers, good gaming sessions, like other types of social environment gatherings, depend on having both the players and the GM observe a number of basic but generally appreciated courtesies. The GM should follow the rules of etiquette and encourage his players to heed to them too. Be prepared. When you host a game, courtesy to the host, courtesy to others. Pre-roll your characters, whenever possible. How many game sessions have been wasted because we've sat around and one person or several people need to make a new character right off the bat, or don't like their old character, or we've got enough experience from the previous adventure that now it's time to power up, advance your character. Now we're going to spend an hour or 2 hours, especially if we're in a group with only one handbook. You got one player's handbook or one GM, one gamer's game core book, and they all have to share, and well, it drags out part of the evening. As a rule of thumb, I've always encouraged people to get their own handbooks, their own core books. If you own the book, look, knowing the rules. You know the rules, I know the rules. It just makes the game easier. I know some GMs that don't like you going through the books when they're running a campaign, because then they feel challenged in some manner. That's personal quirk. On the other hand, if your character leveled up at the end of the session, if there's time, and your character and the player knows exactly what they want to do, hell, yeah, go ahead and let them do it right then and there. Otherwise, I've always said, hey, you got your experience, you got your book. When you get a chance at home later this week, do your business, and then I'll review the player character sheet when it comes in to make sure that they followed the basic they followed the advancement properly, and or so I'm aware of the new thing. Now, if they're experienced people, I don't need to tell them that. They know. And next thing I know, they come out and they say, and they pull a new feat, or they throw a new spell, and I'll go, so that was what you picked? And they said, yeah. And I say, all right, hey, I'm good with that, because I trust them, right? Trust is a good thing. Encourage the others, opening ceremonies, distractions, refreshments, be kind to the GM, all right, the GM, if you will. Accept that the GM is the final authority in the game. Don't cheat, even if it means a character buys the farm. He dies. Don't play favoritism games. Accept the character's death calmly. Don't belabor it. The GM is human. Really, it's true, and will make a mistake, and will make mistakes. If a mistake is fatal, ask the GM to change his decision in good grace without recriminations. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce words sometimes. I know what they mean, I just can't pronounce them. Be sure to compliment the GM on a good game. And the same thing goes with the GM. Be kind to the players. Then there's the administrative GM. One world, many GMs. One player, many characters. Visitors from other worlds, new players, hosting one-shots. General delivery, don't manipulate. Never favorite characters, never punish characters. Always maintain game balance. Styles of play, the hack and slash, which I mentioned a lot. See? That's not something I dreamt up. Thinkers, the righteous role player, the silly game, the historical simulations, the Monty Hall, novel style, wargamer, political pay. Hey, a whole slew of types. How to preparation, scenario 1, scenario planning, background information, statistics, world update. Be prepared. As a GM, that's a watchword. Try to be prepared, but in the process of being prepared, prepare for the unexpected. Excuse me. The players are going to go and do what the players are going to do. And you can spend a lot of time and effort creating this scenario, and they never do it. You just grab them by the bridle and pull them along into the scenario. And sometimes doing that just ruins the play, because that's whatever reason is, they don't want to do that. And so you have to either fire from the hip and ad lib for the rest of the session, or have a few backup plans. And a couple of generic backup plans is always a good thing, and I've tried to do those. I'll get my notebook out and I'll have an alternate ending, if you will, an alternate scenario. Or maybe I'll leap forward to a scenario that I hadn't planned for another session, maybe the next session after that, or the third one, and have them go into that session because we just bypassed this one. I've prepared in advance. That's what I try to do. I try as a GM to prepare 2 or 3 scenarios ahead, because it just makes life easier on me, because life's life, and you never know what kind of thing's going to happen that week that's going to make it so you don't have time to sit down and do the work, do your homework for the next game. Better to be, when you get the opportunity to do 2 or 3 chapters. And that's how I like to look at these scenarios, as chapters in a story. I can do 2 or 3 chapters, get 2 or 3 chapters ahead. Now, that scenario that we missed, that chapter we skipped, well, there's possibly 2 outcomes here. One, because we're running a long campaign, the scenario, that chapter actually had a viable place in the lineup. And later down the road, the characters find themselves stymied. They can't have unanswered questions, or they've encountered something that they didn't encounter and they didn't expect, and they don't know where that came from. And I'll sit there and I'll tell them, "Or do you remember the chapter we skipped? You guys didn't want to read that chapter, so we went on to the next chapter. Maybe we need to go back and revisit that chapter." And that's plausible. You can go back and pick up that scenario that we bypassed and tack it from a different angle, or tack it straight on, and reread that chapter, if you will. And it works. It just does. like I said, what I like these particular books, for me, it brought a lot of needed material. It helped me become better at being a GM. You know, I had to learn to pace the play. This is why my stuff takes a little longer. I like the long-term stuff because you can plot and you can have many threads in play, and not every session has to dangle all of them at one time. Get the players moving, creating unusual puzzles, dead or alive, comic relief, encourage rapid play, avoid splitting up. There's two topics. We could spend entire rants on those, and I'll glaze over it in a moment. Comic relief. There's very few things that are so not funny than somebody trying to be funny. On the other hand, there are scenarios where a couple of characters get together and unintentionally become hilarious or so absurd that you just have to go, "Oh my God, are you kidding me?" That is like, "Are you kidding me?" Right? I can think of Ping and Dorget, which is another several stories unto themselves, in some novels that I've been working on. They were never meant to be together, and they work like they just. It's just there's a dynamic there that's unreal. Uh, then there's the splitting up. That's hard. That is tough. When you get a group of people, and this is where I strongly discourage large gaming groups. When you get more than 5 people, 5 people is really the limit. And although a lot of games are set up so you can hand up to 6, the temptation for those groups, when you get 6 people or more, there's a temptation for those groups to split up. And if you have 5 players and they go off in 5 different directions, well, first off, that's going to slow the game down for everybody something fierce because you have to focus on this guy and then this person and that person and so on and so forth and keep track of all that. That's rough. That is rough to do. Unless you got some players that bought into it, that's rough. Now, on the other hand, the splitting up section, uh, this is where I've made good use of that when we have a game session when one of our players couldn't make it for real world reasons. His car broke down, he has his job, his kid's sick, whatever, or she has to, go visit her mom or take care of some issue. And normally we'd be we would just ghost that person's character. On the other hand, we've had scenarios where it come in and okay, Jane's not going to be here tonight or next week. She had to go out of town on vacation. She's not on town, or she went on vacation or whatever. And knowing that now in advance, we sit there and say, okay, what you guys are going to go do is basically Jane's character is split off from the group to go take care of something of her own, and or she's pursuing some interest, and the groups decides whether or not they want to go hunt her down, try to find find her missing character. Maybe her character got ambushed. They come out of a dense jungle setting and look around and discover Jane's missing. So they spend the next 2 weeks trying to find her, and it leads her to a tribe of pygmy gorilla hunters, and discover that on the third week, Jane's reunited with the group as she's the heroine of saving Gorilla Town from I don't know, whatever, and it works out. Okay, it just works out, and I got the concept out of this book. It's something to keep in mind. Oh, and then we got things to using judgment, players' personalities, the off nights, player feuds, pettiness, inter-party treachery, and backstabbing. All issues that crop up, especially with groups. And sometimes the longer term groups, that's how they end up breaking up, is because internal politics start to get get to them. The know-it-alls, the experts, the me against them mentality. This thing covers a lot of good material involving. I could do several vlogs on just the various stuff in here. I might even focus on some of the stuff because there's so many. And then we get into the chapter on creating worlds, world building 101, which I've done a few of these. And some of the information I got in my back of my head is from, here, this material. Going up on the flora and fauna, zooming in for detail, big animals, placing plants, major predators, populations, building cultural character, population considers walk through their history, behold the works of men, blah blah blah, blah 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 blah. Maps, mapping scales, maps without grids, mapping symbols, world maps, regional maps, map making. That is a fun pastime for a lot of people. A lot of GMs get their jollies off of making loads and loads of maps, and you know that's rough. How do you do that and not get over focused on that particular thing? And or if you're new at it, and I've got a friend who's struggling with this concept, how do you deal with making your own map? You know, here's a few ready-made ones that you could pop up if you need them. But the basic concept here is to show you how, you know, symbology, boxing the map, the square, you know, how do we go about creating a good adventure so we don't get lost and it's not over elaborate. I mean, how many times have you gone into a game as a player and the GM comes down and he rolls out? It basically just keeps rolling and rolling this huge, you know, huge thing that could easily be a wall hanging. I'm guilty. I'm guilty. I actually done that. I wallpapered an entire wall with a map, and this is the world map. And the odds are that we spent one spot in this one little area and dominated for an entire year in this one area because it's a world. It's just too big. You're not going to go everywhere. Now, on the other hand, if you got world traveler campaigns, and I've done that, this is where we don't explain how we got from here to there, but you just crossed half a known planet, and we're jumping into the scenario here because you're pursuing a goal. That can be a challenge. That is a really challenging style of play, and I think it's for the more experienced GM and players. Not something I recommend to people who are just starting out because it's just unwieldy and confusing if you don't do it well. Another advantage of having a well-stocked shelf, because and the last one I did, this group of players were pursuing a bad guy who stole a MacGuffin from a very important king, and the whole kingdom was at risk because the king was assassinated. And in order to prove the legitimacy or guarantee the hierarchies of continuance, they needed this MacGuffin. And so these a combination of loyal retainers and very good cell swords were put together to go pursue this bad guy. And this bad guy traveled from the planet to another plane, from there to a third plane, and then back to the planet, so to speak. So they started out here, they went to an entirely different environment twice, and then they ended out on the other side. They're coming out on the other side of the planet, and basically what passes for the Orient in that world. And since I was using Dungeons and Dragons or the Dungeons and Dragons system, I have all that stuff. So my plain manuals allowed me to let them, let's go here and get the information you need, which then leads you to this place, which nobody wants to go to. But we get there and we discover that one of the bad guys' henchmen is dead, but he's not dead, so we have to go to hell to go talk to him. And then from there, we find the portal to the Orient, and now we're in an entirely different environment of system. You guys stand out like a sore thumb, and that's where we end up with a bad guy in a big old nasty confrontation. Eventually, they did get the MacGuffin back, and the use of a portal spell or something like that, if I recall, helped them get back to the beginning. I think that campaign took 6 months. 3 game sessions a month, 6 months. And that was kind of a short one as far as I was concerned. Anyway, this is running long, and I'm sorry about that. I'm not trying to get them over 15 minutes long. This is a good system, good book. Like I said, yes, if you ignore this and forget that it was created for an older game system, everything in it is still viable and valid. It is still your campaign source book, your Catacomb guide, the campaign source book, right? And I don't care what game system, you Pathfinder fanatics, yeah, this still works for that too. You know, good piece of hardware to have on the shelf. Recommend it. Hope you go out and find one.